All right, let's take a look at what's happening this week. It seems like it's a week of mutual receptions. We have a Moon Mars mutual reception early in the week, followed by a Mercury Jupiter mutual reception. We also have Venus and Mars getting ready to station. Mars is stationing direct while Venus is stationing retrograde. And we also have Pisces season starting now with the Sun entering Pisces. But with that, let's take a look at Monday. As always, Monday is the Moon's day. This is February 17th. The Moon is waning in Scorpio, fallen in her element in Mars's decan end terms, moving towards a Mercury trine. Yeah, so this one is a little interesting. I talked about the mutual receptions, but this is more of a Mars day activity. The Moon day is a little bit different. We're really kind of just wrestling with the Moon being fallen in Scorpio a little bit. But with that said, the Moon is fallen in Scorpio, which can bring a lot of heavy emotions and a lot of difficult things. Sometimes just fears and jealousies and all these deep emotions that sometimes can just get lost in the far corners of our minds and hearts and all things along those lines. But the thing that I thought was really interesting today is that having that Mercury trine might give the Moon maybe a little bit of I don't know, an outlet to channel some of that anguish towards. Mercury in Pisces is still in detriment, so it can be a little tricky to really put these emotions into concrete words and to really digest it all. But I think that the good thing about Mercury in Pisces is that it is very poetic. And so this is why I have an image, the Moon trying to write a song with her guitar as she's crying and having like just a little bit of a moment. I think that today can be a really good day for having a little bit of a moment and maybe channeling it into art or creativity or anything that really speaks to you, but maybe just don't try to have a very cohesive conversation around these emotions. But it's for those reasons that I gave today a 3 difficulty and a 2 utility. I think the difficulty of the day is sitting with those emotions, and the utility is maybe being able to channel that in creative ways. Some of the signs that should be paying attention to today are Gemini, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, and Pisces. All right, moving on to our Tuesday. This is February 18th. This is Mars's day. Mars is in Cancer still, retrograde, fallen in his own element in Mercury's decan end terms, mutually receiving the Moon and stationing direct in 5 days. So by next week, we'll already have Mars direct, which is pretty exciting. Though you might think that it's not that exciting of an image. You see this child and potentially his mother just kind of screaming as they're trying to walk through these waters, and it's like this intense moment. But I think that the good thing that I'm seeing with this, and speaking to the mutual receptions that I was talking about earlier, is that both Mars and the Moon might be in difficult spaces. The Moon is fallen in Scorpio, Mars is fallen in Cancer, but they're helping each other through that. They're kind of just holding each other through that tough time. I think this is really nice to have as Mars is getting ready to station direct, because it's kind of like getting the Moon to really give Mars that last push that it needs before it's just out there in the world doing Cancer things again, and then in the future doing Leo things again, and then just moving on from that whole cycle, which would be great. So I think that today can be a little bit of a stressy moment as things really seem to like be still. With this image, I was almost seeing this moment of when things are so chaotic that it seems like everything is in slow motion and everything has stopped. And so I think that today can be a little bit of that, where it's hectic, it's crazy, but in the end, that just kind of makes it so you're really able to see everything with very clear eyes. I think it's for that reason that I gave today a 4 difficulty, but a 3.5 utility. I think the difficulty is nothing new. Mars has been in Cancer for a really long time, so we're really dealing with a lot of the same, but the utility is being able to see these problems with maybe a fresh set of eyes, or maybe with just a more honest gaze, like you really know what you're dealing with and you're ready to move forward with that thing. And the signs I should be paying attention to today are Aries, Cancer, and Scorpio. All right, moving on to February 19th. This is our Wednesday, Mercury's day. Mercury is in Pisces, in sect, in detriment, and fall, out of element in Jupiter's decan and Venus's terms, mutually receiving Jupiter through a square. Today is an interesting and peculiar day. Mercury is in fall and detriment in Pisces. It's kind of like the one place that Mercury said to like really kind of struggle a little bit, just because Pisces is not very concerned with data as much as Mercury can be. And so sometimes Mercury can just feel a little lost in there. But this time around, we do have Mercury being in sect. So Mercury right now likes the earth and water signs more than the fire and air signs. So there's a lot that can be done with Mercury there. It's really more about the studying and digesting and just like the taking in of information as opposed to the blah, 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 yap, yap Mercury that we usually get. But what's interesting is that we do have Jupiter, who is a naturally sort of yang planet or a diurnal planet that naturally likes the air and fire signs in an air sign, which is also ruled by Mercury. So we have these two planets kind of really helping each other out in peculiar and maybe unorthodox ways. And this is what I was trying to gather with the image, because I had this idea of maybe this older man kind of turning to like this young little girl for feedback on his poems. That's kind of how I was seeing this. This can be a day to ask for advice from people who maybe you thought could not provide a very cohesive or intelligent perspective on your work, but as it turns out today, that's actually exactly what's needed. It's like that fresh perspective that's so totally outside of your realm that you can really innovate and do something new with whatever it is that you're doing. So I feel like today can be a day of ideas, maybe a lot of strange ideas, some that can really go somewhere if we're willing to take our time with this. I feel like this could very well be a thing that starts now and maybe just picks up later in June when Mercury and Jupiter finally conjoin again in Gemini. But it might be good for like a think tank or maybe even just getting ideas from new and strange places. And it's for that reason that I settled at a 3 difficulty for today and a 4 utility. I think the difficulty can be the confusion. If you're a person who wants concrete answers, maybe today is not for you. But if you're willing to explore the numinous and the weird and the spooky and the woo-woo, today probably is the day for you. And the utility is a 4 because I think that there is a lot that can be found in these weird spaces. It might not be concrete and clear answers, but it might be some clues that lead you to those answers in the future. But the signs that really should be paying attention to today should be Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. All right, moving on to Thursday. This is February 20th. This is Jupiter's day. Jupiter, like I said, is in Gemini, in detriment in his element, and Mars is decan in his own terms, recently departing from a Mercury mutual reception opposite the moon while being approached by a Venus sextile. That is a whole mouthful for Jupiter. Jupiter is really involved with a lot. But at the same time, Jupiter, if you remember from last week, is still really, really slow. Jupiter's not retrograde anymore, but it hasn't really moved from that station degree. And so I'm still sensing a little bit of a lazy Jupiter sort of situation. But because of the Mercury reception that we talked about and the fact that the moon is in Sagittarius, kind of bringing Jupiter a piece of a place that Jupiter likes, I think that this can be a day where Jupiter maybe doesn't have too much to do, but there's things coming Jupiter's way, right? If you're a Jupiter person, it can be that there's things kind of starting to build up. You see where they might go, but they're not really kind of going anywhere yet. And so that's why I have in the image just Jupiter coming out of his house and picking up a package. What's in the package is up to you. It's been delivered by Mercury and the moon. With the moon in Sagittarius and Mercury in Pisces, it's likely something foreign and exquisite and exciting. But maybe opening the box, Jupiter is a little tired of opening boxes, if you remember Jupiter's story from season 1 and how that was. So I think Jupiter might take some time to really open himself up to these new things, but eventually we'll definitely get there and we'll get to find out what's in this package. But it's for those reasons that I gave today a 2.5 difficulty and a 2 utility, and I think that the difficulty is just in not really feeling up for it and maybe not really wanting to get out there and get going and do all sorts of things in true Jupiter and Gemini fashion. Jupiter might just be exploring a lot of ideas, spinning around in them, but not really moving forward. That can be the struggle of today. But the utility is in relaxing. I know that I said that last week probably, but do that again. You can rest as many times as you need. Some signs that should be paying attention to today, though, are Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Virgo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Pisces, just because there's a lot involved in this astrological soup out there. But moving on to our Friday, this is Venus's day, February 21st. Venus is in Aries, out of element, in detriment, in Mars's decan, and her own terms, and soon stationing retrograde in 7 days. And she's somewhat sextile Jupiter, like I've been talking about, and that's kind of a big theme of this Venus station. And I actually already started talking about this a little bit last week with what I called the day drinking Venus. But today I think Venus is more enamored with this idea of freedom. And we started talking about freedom before, but I think that maybe Venus has gotten a taste of what it's like to pursue what she wants and maybe kind of like dampen the outside voices a little bit, and now she's just so into herself. that might be the thing that makes her walk back into some of these things. Maybe to find something that she brushed off as like, oh, I don't have time for this because I have to take care of so and so. But now she's like, actually, I really wanted that. Let me go back and grab that. So this is why I have in the image Venus with a torch in hand. She looks at the flames and she looks absolutely enamored by it. I feel like to a certain degree, and especially as you're going to see next week, fire is something that should not be played with Venus. And I think that if last week was a day drinking Venus, maybe today is like a bit of a pyromaniac Venus. It's like, oh, the fire, it just looks so beautiful and so shiny. Wouldn't it be nice to like set a car on fire or some shit like that? Some crazy radical Venus and Aries stuff. Please do not do that unless it's in a contained, safe space. But I think that that's kind of the warning of today. Like, yes, Venus is really excited to go pursue those things, but I think that through the retrograde, Venus might actually find out that it might be a little trickier to retrieve that thing that was left behind than she gave it credit for. But I think that this Jupiter sextile, knowing that it will eventually complete one day, just does point us toward a certain degree of a promise of success. Like, this will lead somewhere. We just gotta sit through the retrograde. And I think that Venus, in this image at least, looks very ready. I think being her own terms in Aries really kind of brings that air of readiness. Like, I'm willingly going to the fucking gates of hell or whatever. But yes, it's for those reasons that I gave today a 3.5 difficulty and a 2.5 utility. I think the difficulty is in kind of sitting with that, maybe the regret or the desire of that thing that was left behind. The thing that you lost potentially because you compromised yourself in the process of taking care of somebody else potentially. Now, the utility of today, though, I think is in that willingness to actually go and get it back. I think, like I said, kind of just to add more to the difficulty too, can be the journey to retrieve that thing might be a little trickier than anticipated, but I think the readiness is the utility of today. Just being able to say, like, you know what? I will go retrograde in my own terms, quite literally. But on that note, the signs I should be paying attention to today are Aries, Taurus, Libra, Sagittarius, and Pisces. All right, getting into our weekend is February 22nd. This is Saturn's day. Saturn is still in Pisces, out of element, peregrine, in Jupiter's decan, and Mars's terms, and approaching a Mercury conjunction. This was one of my favorite images of the week. We just have Lady Saturn approaching a weird salesperson in an alley in this Pisces little town. Usually we'd think that it's Saturn that kind of crimps Mercury style a little bit, but I think this time around is Mercury who's fooling Saturn around in Pisces. Mercury is in their own terms currently approaching Saturn, so I think that Mercury very much has the upper hand, while Saturn is peregrine and lost and just trying to find herself in this jovial landscape that is Pisces. And maybe Mercury might have a couple potions and some promises of healing and whatever. And Saturn might actually fall for it with the conjunction. I think that could be the warning of today. Like, if anybody comes around promising great victories and the solution to all your problems, and it's just so easy, you just gotta drink this, or you just gotta do this, you just gotta sign here, I would be a little bit weary of that. And yes, it's for those reasons that I gave today a 3.5 difficulty and a 1.5 utility. I think the difficulty is in being fooled around. I think today is a day where we might be susceptible to being lied to. I think the utility is pretty low, but I think what's useful about today is just having that little bit of agency to say no if somebody is being weird to you. But the signs I should be focusing on today are Gemini, Virgo, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Closing our week is February 23rd. This is the Sun's day. The Sun's now in Pisces, out of element Peregrine in Saturn's decan and Venus's terms, moving towards being received by Jupiter through a square. This one is nice. I actually really like this because if you remember last week, I talked about how the Sun going from Aquarius to Pisces is kind of yucky because the Sun doesn't love air signs. The Sun also doesn't really love water signs. But this reception, especially like right out of the gate, can feel really nice. And reception is just like the Sun's in a weird place, but then Jupiter comes along and it's like, you know what? Here's the thing that you need to feel a little bit more comfortable in this space. And so this is what I have in the image. It's the Sun having arrived at the Pisces shores, seeing a beacon in the distance. Kind of like the Sun is lost and doesn't know where to go, but then Jupiter sends a shining light that guides the way, and the Sun just knows where to go. So I feel like today can be a little bit of that, a day where we might feel a little lost, but then somebody comes along and helps us find a certain degree of direction. Really, this reception doesn't happen today, and it kind of builds throughout the entire week that's coming up. So this might be something that you don't necessarily see today, but it just kind of starts to gain traction today. So be open to receiving some help. The help that may come might be a little harsh and a little slow and sluggish, considering how Jupiter has been, like we've been talking about, but is help nonetheless. And I think that is definitely welcome. And it's because of that I gave today a 3.5 difficulty and a 2 utility. The 3.5 difficulty is in being lost, and maybe in that help also that we get not being entirely speedy or very practical. But the utility is a 2, and the utility is in being able to actually get that help from a professional or somebody who already knows what it is that you're trying to do. They might be slow and kind of also a little lost in the sauce, but they certainly know more than you, and that's already something. This is our week, guys. Let's take a look at our week at a glance. It seems that on average, it's more of a difficult than an easy week, but it's pretty almost down the middle. We settled at a 3 difficulty and a 2.5 utility on average, and I think that our most useful days are certainly the mutual reception days. I'm looking at Tuesday and Wednesday especially, and I really think that towards the weekend things get really difficult, so I would try to reserve my things for those 2 days. But with that, guys, I think that's it for today. I am Joe G, and you can find me at themercuryrising.com. And if you want specific information for your zodiac sign about this week, I write about that every week on my newsletter, and you can subscribe on my website. So I hope to see you there. All right, until then, bye-bye.